Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is episode 4, and I am joined by JB Little, or better known as DropTheDie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
This is this has been good. I must admit, I had a bit of for a second I was worried about getting guests on because last week I had 2 interviews planned for a day. And through no fault of their own, they both had to cancel. So I was like, "Oh no, has I said something publicly by accident that people are just like, no, we can't meet with this guy anymore." No, clearly,
life is tumultuous at best.
Yeah, no,
so
of
that's
course.
pretty much all it is.
Yeah. But no, I suppose we might as well just sort of dive straight into it. For people who don't necessarily know, what are the sort of products you're sort of best known for?
I mean that's such a loaded question.
No,
right?
I know.
Because I don't know how people know me. But
Okay. How would you?
What people have said
Mhm.
have said about my products and what they really enjoy the most about them, and what I've kind of gravitated towards since I started doing all this, is giving DMs a toolkit, a little improvisational springboard for ideas, right? So in every publication that I've done, I try to tie in little details that might spark people's creativity more than giving them a huge outline to follow to tell a story. Like an NPC's introduction might do more for that NPC than any description that you could give them, you know?
Because I must admit, so prior to this interview and stuff like that, I was looking through essentially your catalog, or a collection of sort of I don't know, it's a catalog. Yeah, catalog sounds the most professional thing.
Sure.
You've got like a sort of incredible range of differing products between, like, the taverns and tap rooms, obviously the character introductions. You've also done a fair bit of sort of like, I don't know what to call the sort of the character sheet stuff, the sort of it's almost like
aspect.
or like graphic design, or those sort of So I'm curious. What was the first product you pushed on DMsGuild?
The very first product that I ever released was the bag of holding inventory sheet. Because I gave my players a bag of holding at one point in our own campaign, and they were writing down everything they got on notebook paper and starting to lose track of stuff, and they weren't sure how much it could hold, and they kept having to look up the rules. So I just put it all on one big sheet and handed it to them. I'm like, if you want to put it on your computer, I made it form fillable here. Like, oh, this is so great. And then I put it up on the DMsGuild for like 30 cents or something like that. And people started really buying it. And it made me reevaluate, like, is this actually worth money, worth people's time?
Yeah.
And I think I still have it on there for less than $2. I can't be sure, but that's been my first gold bestseller. It was the thing that really hooked me into doing all this.
So. But in fairness, it's such a simple concept, and it's the case of like this. I imagine for at least some of these inventory sheets or character sheets for like the Ranger, I imagine it probably came from a necessity in your sort of DM group, and you thought, one or two other people may find this useful.
Yeah, that was the thought, is one or two more people might, and then it's thousands of downloads later. I'm like, well, maybe people actually do really need this. Not everybody's going to spend 4 hours of their week, making this thing. They're not going to have the PDF editor. They're not going to know how to do it.
Yeah. I must admit, I think I fall often into the idea of like, a bag of holding. Yeah, you can throw anything in there. Just load it up. Yeah, no.
Well,
the suit of armor, that in the bag.
Yeah, it's way less about enforcing rules and more enabling, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because like me as a player, I love to keep track of every little thing, so that 25 sessions later, I can be like, you remember that piece of glass that I kept? Use it to do this thing,
The sort of the rather than having the the realistic 30 minutes of rummaging through the bag, going, what have we got in here again? The old shoe that talks, or whatever it is.
If you can't remember exactly what's in the bag, you have to turn it inside out to look. Oh, come on.
So I'm curious. So when exactly did you make the sort of I guess transition from these sort of like player assisting tools to DM assisted tools, or so the greetings, the
Well, honestly, I made that stuff in the very beginning for the DMs to
Yeah.
keep them from getting headaches.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like if the player doesn't know what's on their character sheet or they don't know what's in their bag of holding, that falls back on the DM more often than it does on the player, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a hard transition to split it into player and DM both get use out of it, you know? But as I was doing this campaign, we played a Curse of Strahd campaign for a little over a year. And then we transitioned straight into Storm King's Thunder and some other stuff that I wrote on my own. And we ended up wrapping it up only when I moved. Like, we played for almost 4 years, I think.
Jeez.
So every time that I had these little sparky ideas that my players, who were all English majors and graduate level literary critics, you know, anytime I had an idea that kind of sparked them into something creative, I thought, no, I need to write this down for something.
Yeah.
Because when you have an NPC walk up to a character, for instance, and say, "Hail, well met," that's, you know, just a throwaway hello in fantasy terms. But if they walk up and say, "I would give you a gold just to hear you speak," like, that gives you a different impression of who this NPC is.
It's very
without.
Yeah, I got tingles.
without taking up a whole bunch of real estate. Like, there's not a lot to manage there. It's just, what do you think this NPC is like based on this one line that they said to introduce themselves, you know?
No, that's awesome. I think as well, it's like I think I mentioned one of my favorite things to sort of, anytime I come to write a product, any opportunity I get to write in the voice of a character or to sort of give quotes or anything to that extent, I always there's a sort of soft spot for me that I sort of always enjoys those moments.
Character voice is great, even as a DM. Like, getting the chance to write it out, it's so good. So
I'm curious then. So is your creative process behind things? 90% of them, do they stem from playing like with like in your campaign, or do you have other ones that sort of like where do you get your ideas? Is the sort of the crux of the question.
Yeah, I think that finding an idea that I can build something with is like 95% of the work, to be honest. Because you have so many thousands and thousands of little ideas of stuff that would, that could be cool. But like, are people going to get use out of this? Is it going to be worth my time? Are people willing to pay for this? Because, you know, I love making stuff for free, but also I do love having lights. So you got to kind of balance things out there. I think a lot of it is just listening to players, my own or other people's. So even when I'm listening to podcasts, like the Venture Maidens podcast, one of the things that sparked up a lot was that they weren't really sure how their magic items worked. And early on, like, I didn't know Celeste or Sage or any of them. But when I thought about that, I'm like, I bet you my own players have that kind of struggle. And that's when I started doing Magic Item Monday, like single sheet magic items. And I would just give the players the sheet with the magic item on it and like all the charges written out so they could check them off when they use them, any little rules they need to know about the magic item. And, you know, even if they didn't need it at all, the fact that they had it and could look back at it made my life easier. So just listening to other players and bouncing those ideas around in my head, like, how can I help a DM tell a better story from this problem?
I think one of the things I find as a DM is how invaluable having a player group is that is sort of accommodating to the occasional, you know, you guys are like in a sort of more traditional setting, saying, on this road you happen across, you know, you introduce them to your content, you get almost like free play testing. But no, that's amazing to sort of like, you look at particular like needs of I guess it's sort of like podcast plays and to sort of think, well, this is where else things can sort of be applicable. What about when it comes to necessarily, so moving more towards the sort of your taverns, tap rooms, those sort of products and stuff like that? Just because I imagine those are, I imagine, I don't want to call them like a more creative endeavor. I mean, like, I'm trying to think of
a whole lot more work.
Yeah, that for one, yeah. I imagine.
A completely abysmal more amount of work. Yeah. I don't know. When it came to taverns, inns, and tap rooms, I do not drink. I don't go to pubs. I don't go to bars or anything like that. So really, I was like, why in the hell am I actually doing this at one point? So that's why it took me 6 months to actually do, is I had to learn all about how people made wine, how mead was different from this other thing. Like, is there a difference between whiskey and bourbon? There's not. You know, that kind of thing.
So you dive deep.
Yes, like everything in there is as researched academically from my BA in English Lit. It is academically as accurate as I can make it for all intents and purposes. And I've plugged a couple people who are in the brewing aspect of things just for those alcohols. I'm like, tell me if I'm full of shit. Does this work? But I was like, I don't know any of this. Boy, would it be helpful if I just had a PDF that had it all already done. So then I just made that PDF for everybody.
Yeah.
And, I expected it to sell a couple copies. I didn't think that it hit, platinum. It's on its way to mithril. Yeah.
Yeah. I must admit, I tend to look at, was it copper, and then it's like silver, and then I haven't looked that far further down the metal line just yet, just because like that's the dragons, holding things problems. I'm counting my pennies at the moment. But no, honestly, what is it? So both the original The Taverns, Inns and Tap Rooms, and then also the In Hell version. Did you find, like, when you sort of came out to the sequel, was that an easier process because you'd already gone through one, or was it
decidedly easier? Yeah. Far, 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 far easier. About 6 months easier.
Wow.
For that second version.
So the first one took 6 months. The second one took like how long?
30 days.
Like 3 days. Wow.
30.
Oh, I see.
Start to finish, it took 30 days, and that's setting up the idea, writing it all out, editing, proofing, re-editing, adding in guest writers, layout, cover.
Yeah.
Everything. 30 days was the turnaround on that. So though it sold fewer copies, it was substantially easier to actually produce and manage.
I mean, that is quite an impressive turnaround for like a DMsGuild product, I think. I think with the larger collaborations, you sort of see that sort of exponentially increases the time. You can sometimes be sitting on something for like a year and a half. So I'm curious then, between everything you've sort of done, when it comes to starting a project, what is your favorite part?
I think that my favorite part is about the halfway point, when I already had the idea and I've started to develop it, right? And then I'll just start sharing little screenshots, low resolution. There's still red squiggly lines under everything, I'm like, what do you think of this idea? What do you think about this dragonborn being in love with a cat? Like, just whatever.
Yeah.
And having people soundboard and tell me that that's exciting for them, that they like that there's a problem I hadn't noticed, little things like that. Having people engage with something when it's not done is the best for me. It shows like that you have good bones to what you're creating, and it's not just the prim and the polish that sells it, but the people are excited about what you're actually writing, like the idea that you had.
And so I imagine, are you quite do you sort of like throw these sort of ideas out on Twitter, or do you have like where do you seek your feedback? Like
a lot of it goes to my patrons on Patreon.
Yeah.
I don't think that they realize that, because Patreon's a very quiet system unless you're doing adult photography and stuff like that, where people give huge amounts of feedback. But I plug my patrons all the time with questions and comments. I ask them about my book covers, how they could be better, can everyone read it, things like that. But I also have my old players, again, who are all literary, graduate students, and new friends that I have on Twitter, and I get different feedback from all three groups, and I take all the feedback, put it together, and I take the average. That way it's not too complex for people, it's not too lowbrow for people, it's easily accessible. I just feel that kind of works best.
No, it sounds like you've definitely got like your process definitely reaches that sort of happy medium, and I think it's easy
happy
when you come to
medium is exactly what I'm shooting for.
I think as well it's easy as a creator to sort of be scared to get feedback, and while there are some really good sort of communities out there and stuff like that, I think the idea that I would take something that is like a half-baked idea and throw it on Twitter, at the moment that seems like, oh no, that's where it goes to die. I put it out here, it gets 2 likes, 3 comments, 2 of which are like, why?
I mean, that still happens to me. I'll share a story or a little magic item like the dress with pockets or something like that.
Cute.
And it'll blow up.
Yeah.
I did the little D&D story about a magic item that I gave my characters forever and ever ago. And it got like 1.9 million impressions or something like in 2 days. And there was still like half and half. People are like, this is so great. And other people are like, this is trash DM, terrible job, dumb, I hate it. Why didn't they just do this?
There's always going to be curmudgeons though. And exactly. I must admit, I think it's sometimes it's the thing where a negative comment can feel like the weight of 10. But I think I'm fortunate enough to be in the mindset that a positive comment's like the weight of 20. Like sometimes just to hear that sort of like one person be like, hey, that's pretty cool. I'm like, thank you. I like you.
What really makes me trust Twitter is that I know who my friends on Twitter are, like the people that I talk to outside of Twitter, you know. So the fact that a stranger would see it and be like, this is cool. Like, oh really?
Yeah.
You're not just saying that to be nice?
Yeah, you have no reason to be nice to me. You could be saying anything, but
you could be horrible and there's nothing I could do, but you said something nice.
No, I must admit, I think I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it. I think there are definitely some really nice pockets of the tabletop community, especially on Twitter. And I think it's nice to sort of get involved and sort of surround yourself and see the sort of camaraderie as everyone sort of like bringing everyone up, paying forward and all that. Now, with that little bit of positivity aside, when it comes to a project, what's the sort of what sort of do you drag your feet about? What's the sort of like project that sometimes sort of causes a little bit of anguish?
It has been ubiquitous since the very start that my least favorite part of any publication is dealing with the cover. Yeah. I hate it. Because I can be so proud of this thing that I've created, and if it doesn't have a clickable cover, I may as well just throw it straight into the trash.
Yeah.
I'll sell 30 copies at most over the first several months until someone picks it up and reads it.
Yeah.
So if you don't get lucky and have one of your peers who's very respected, a reviewer, or some like tabletop news network pick it up and say, hey, you should pay attention to this. Despite the cover, it's really good. Or if you're working with a publisher that's had years and years and years and years of experience to build up that kind of thing, they can just give you a leather cover with gold letters that says magic.
Yeah.
Ooh, I gotta buy this magic book.
Yeah.
But small creators, it's like, you didn't spend $350 on that cover? I don't care.
Yeah.
And that it just heartens me so much.
I think it is interesting to see as well I guess the because of DMsGuild, it does offer the comparison between like creators content and then also the Adventurers League, which I mean, like there's nothing wrong with the Adventurers League cover, but it's the most minimalist, like, and the sort of the sort of hoops sort of standard creators have to get through.
It's hard because I know that you've kind of experienced this, seen this, and felt it. There's been this push towards quality without any push towards paying more. So we're still getting, on average, 8 to 10 cents per page for the work that we're doing, but people are expecting better art. They're expecting more layout. They're expecting texture on every page, no editing problems, marketing, covers, and we're still making $3 per sale, and there's thousands and thousands of other people now kind of fighting for that same position as you. It can be pretty daunting.
I think this is why when it comes to sometimes name value does hold a fair bit, and I think it is the case that in Ep.4 and stuff like that, with my first product, which was the classic solo adventure weighing, I could just put something out there. I learned a lot, and with each, I imagine the same as well, with each product you learn more. and it does build your catalog. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I can look at everything you've released and I'm like, oh wow, there's a clear sort of like, you have a brand, at least with these sort of like purpley pinky splotch.
Yeah, the early days, that was the best that I could really do. Take my logo colors and slap them on there.
But that's what I mean, and then obviously with some of the other products and stuff, you have the sort of the eye-catching art, and I think as well, it almost feels like you're pinched at two ends, because one, you're pinched in trying to get the money or like get the attention of the product you deserved, but then also you don't want to like commission an artist and not pay them the right amount
Exactly.
and it's so it's like, okay, well I can pay less, and then you want to value their time and not sort of waste anyone around. But I don't know, I think
a lot of
I don't know, Byron.
I was just going to say, this is a huge tip for people out there. A lot of commissioning artists for cheaper, and artists have to eat too, so don't expect to get any cheaper than their rates, first off. But the longer you give them and the more you talk with them about the project before they do any work, the more likely they're going to be to help you out and find something that works inside your budget. I gave Allie on the first Taverns, Inns, and Tap Rooms, I think I gave her 4 months to do that cover. Like, I gave her an exceptionally long time whenever she needed it. I gave her just a little outline. I'm like, you have creative freedom. I'll pay you half up front. So, we brought it down from like a $400 cover to like a $200 cover.
Yeah. Just
because I was making her life so much easier.
I think it is. It's eventually something you build up that rapport with and stuff like that. And I think it's the sort of initial negotiation is just making sure that neither person's trying to, I don't know, get one over the other. It's what you want it to be is both people are on the same page and want to try to put their best foot forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's and like I said, I think I've been fortunate and stuff like that. I've been able to work with some cool artists, and I've got some cool people I'm working with in the future. And yeah, what I know as well is when you have the sort of first success, it means approaching them in the future gets that much sort of easier. Yeah. So
you're like, oh, he didn't stiff me.
Yeah.
he paid me like 10 minutes after I told him I needed the money. Okay.
I didn't have to break his kneecaps. This is wonderful.
Exactly.
So moving on, like in terms of like the questions, what's like one of the sort of core lessons that you kind of wish you knew a little bit earlier into sort of your creative career, at least on the DMsGuild?
So we talked a little bit about kind of our first products. Really, you cannot just make those and then leave them alone. You have to keep stirring them up and telling people, hey, it's been 12 months since I released this. 1 year anniversary. Here's my my bag of holding sheet for half off. Getting people interested in your backlog, your back catalog of things that you've made will make future products easier for you to do, because as soon as they see your new stuff and they've already had your old stuff, they're going to be more excited about the new thing. So if it's just constantly new announcements, new things, and you never talk about your back catalog, you're missing out on a huge swath of people. Because I think probably 9/10 of everything I've ever released was only on that front page for a day, maybe a day and a half, unless it hit like number 1 and stayed there for 6 weeks. So chances are you're going to miss out on 3/4 of the people that want to buy that product if you only push it 3 or 4 times when it's first released. You really need to come back and tell people, hey, look at this thing I made. Might be interesting to you.
So I guess this is more like a sort of social media or like marketing question. But how do you get the sort of like balance on your social media between not being a constant barrage of, hey, you should buy my stuff? Is it just more like the way you use the platform, or like I'm curious about how that side?
Yeah, I mean, it's something to really think about, that I did not make my Twitter really to sell people on anything. I started doing reviews before I made anything for DMsGuild. And those were free. No one ever paid me for them. I didn't pay for people to read the reviews. It's just these companies were like, hey, we made a really cool dice box. We want you to check it out. I'm like, cool, I'll give you my honest opinion.
Yeah.
So I wanted to grow a community of people who weren't absolute monsters and terrible people.
Yeah.
And when you do that, people tend to gravitate towards you as something of a safe space. You know, I'm not going to have somebody say some bigoted comment to one of my followers on my Twitter without getting eviscerated.
Yeah.
And that's just,
well, I mean, that's how it should be, you know?
And so I think that nobody blames you for trying to hustle, trying to do this thing. You made this thing, you would like them to check it out. But I think a big part of it is not having that be all they know about you. People know that I like to cook, and they know that I'm very anxious and I have a lot of social anxiety and stuff like that I struggle with just like they do. And they know that I love to wash my pillowcases every single week on Friday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I say I wrote this thing, check it out, you know, I'm not trying to sell them on it. I'm telling them it's there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing. On Facebook, you're just gonna have to throw it out there. And you're never gonna build a community on Facebook. You're never gonna be part of anything that's comfortable and fun. Just throw it out there so that people see it. That's been my experience anyway over the past 3 years. Is, you know, Facebook's kind of an echo chamber of people that feel a little more entitled than Twitter usually does. Twitter is more aimed towards artists and creatives, I think. And a lot of them are like, I want people to listen when I post something I did. I'll listen when he posts something that he did.
No, I must admit, I think when it comes back to sort of, I guess, promoting sort of older content, that's why I do like the sort of medal system. Because sometimes you do have the sort of like, it can be a slow burn, but when something's sitting at around about like 47, and you're just like, soon I can make a post about this. Either you make the post which is like, oh, it's one sale away, or it's just gone copper.
It is a great icebreaker for sure.
Yeah.
Whenever you're like, I only need 2 for, you know, silver. It's been 9 months since I released this. I sold 10 copies. I'd love to get to copper.
Yeah. But in fairness, I think it's interesting to sort of see, at least like when speaking to some other authors and stuff like that, when they hit that sort of tipping point when they're no longer sort of chasing medals anymore. Just because at that point, you know, they have a huge catalog, they have other sort of things. I'm curious, do you think do you still get the same sort of satisfaction from ticking over each sort of medals, or do you sort of?
God, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Every
it's
day.
A mad rush.
I check it every day. I have a list of what my sales were for each month so that I can look more easily at how things are doing. Because I'm one of those people that would chase the higher number in video games.
Yeah.
And it kind of hits that same pleasure center in my brain, seeing, you know, something moving up towards the next, you know, goalpost. That's just always been interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I have had, oh God, what's a good way to phrase this? I've had a lot of success in DMsGuild thus far. I am writing, you know, D&D content full time, and that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But I don't merit how good something is based off of the medals that it's won, but they excite me from my stuff.
Yeah.
It makes it.
I mean, I think it's very different to sort of see a product that is very well crafted, but then it's the medals on your product and stuff like that. You know,
Yes,
it's
exactly. Because I'm just as excited for a product that has no medals as I am for something that's platinum sometimes. But for my own stuff, the fact that I can see it's won a medal that only 0.1% of everything on the guild has done, like that's. I mean, it's good to reassure myself.
It is still baffling to see the percentage of products that have copper. I think it's still like a small percent, and which I think. Well, I mean, if you look at like the new products every day, I think it gets pushed. So it's not too surprising. And I'm curious as well. So what was it? So JVC Parry, who had as one of my first guests and stuff like that, he had literally only just recently made the transition from, you know, writing D&D content full time. How long ago did you make that transition, and was it a particularly easy one for you, or?
Let's see. It was August of 2018. I was living in Mississippi, and I was working a full-time job. and the job allowed me to listen to about 12 hours of podcasts a day. So, that was great. But a lot of things happened all at once. My landlady told me that my rent was going to be going up 80%. My boss told me that the store was closing at the end of the month.
Jeez.
Like a whole lot of stuff, life-changing stuff happened all at once. And I reached out to the community and I was like, what do I do? Do I just try to stay here and get a job? Do I move? And the community ended up, raising almost $3,000 for me to move out to Las Vegas and live with my best friend, Brandon, for a little while.
Yeah.
And when I moved here, I didn't have a license for here. I didn't have my car smogged, like I was just living on borrowed time, and I was trying to get a job like mad, but I couldn't find one. And then I realized, as I was spending all of my extra free time making D&D content, that I was making more than I did at the job I had in Mississippi already. And it had only been like 2 months. By October, I was making way more than I did at my previous job for the amount of effort it took, at the very least.
Yeah.
And I came to Brandon and his wife Phoenix, who I was living with at the time. I'm like, do I try this? Do I just give this a shot?
Yeah.
They're like, I don't see why not. Worst case scenario, you just go to an unemployment office,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And ever since then, it's been paying the bills. It was not easy at first, and it's not easy right now because my living situation has changed. Rent's gone up.
Yeah.
A lot of expenses kind of thing. But I have this huge supportive community now and all these patrons and people who are interested in my products. And I think that if I just continue to plug away at it and it keeps growing, then, it'll be perfectly fine. If it doesn't, just pull a ripcord,
Yeah.
Taking a step back does not mean that you failed in this endeavor. It just means you had to take a step back.
No, I mean, like I said, it's the classic case of you have to shoot your shot. You have to go for it and stuff like that. Yeah. No, Dan, that's an awesome story. I'm glad you've been in a sort of situation where you can try this sort of thing. I imagine. Exactly.
I feel super lucky that I had the situation come up where I really didn't have a choice but to try it, and it worked out. Nice. But everyone who's ever talked to me about it, and like, how did you do this full time? I'm like, man, I just stopped spending money. Yeah. I just kept making D&D stuff. Yeah. Every time I had an idea, I just churned out something, released it, and asked people what they wanted me to do, and just gotta kind of try it.
Yeah. Jeez, damn. I think I think what I'm loving about this podcast is not for anyone listening. It's more for me. I'm having a lot of fun with this. And if people haven't watched, that's great. But I'm having fun regardless. So now that you sort of like sort of dedicating it to full time, the sort of projects you're sort of picking up and sort of choosing to do, you still have a sort of like dream project or something that's sort of like that at the end of the day, this if I can do this, or is it the sort of you taking project by project?
Right now I'm taking whatever project comes up, and I think that if we talk about that, you'll understand. But really, the dream for me, I love D&D 5e. Don't get me wrong, I really, really, really do. Right, and I've made a career off of it. I've played hundreds of hours of it.
Here comes the but. I'm prepared.
But it is so difficult to balance the game for tension's sake, outside of like story beats your characters have no control over. It like once they hit level 10, your PCs can overthrow kingdoms in like an afternoon.
It's hard
to
kill
them. They can teleport into the throne room, kill the king, take his place, wipe everyone's mind, blow up the castle. It's an action to destroy a city at level 15. You know what I mean? So I think that a dream project for me would be to dig back down into my grim dark fantasy roots and do like a Darkest Dungeon style D&D 5e hack. Something where madness and valor kind of come into play, and it's deadly, but it feels interesting and evolved. It's not just a lot of damage and you get constantly murdered and make new characters, the meat grinder feel.
Mm-hmm. It's the sort of the slow deterioration, or the sort of, the fatigue of going through an adventure.
The fatigue of surviving the world around you in 5e would be so cool to me.
I must admit, the Darkest Dungeon.
That would be like my dream project. Would be actual CD Projekt Red coming to me and saying, "I want you to make a D&D hack for us." That would be,
Well, here you go. You've claimed it now. So now the trajectory will just sort of it'll just work itself out.
It would be so good.
I think as well, what I liked about Darkest Dungeon is the writing of that game. Just the narrator and his voice. Oh, it's so smooth. It's
everything in the game drives a singular purpose, and I think that's why I love it so much. Is that's how I make my PDFs too. Like, I'll think, I want this PDF to show people how to run taverns and give them everything they need to do, and then every single thing I write in that PDF will be about that one sentence. And Darkest Dungeon is, I want them to feel threatened. Everything about the game makes you feel threatened. Oh, you have the best item in the game. It gives you +2. That's nothing. Come on.
I do like that, and I think it's lovely to sort of see the products that sort of are such well-rounded, because they stick to the core of what the product is. Probably something I should give that a go. That's a good idea. I might like that sort of a DMsGuild production. So sort of, it seems like you've sort of gained so much from being engaged in the community, and sort of like being involved, getting in contact with them. Sometimes them coming out to sort of support you. Who's out there in the sort of community that sort of inspires you, or you always go, damn? And you don't feel like you have to narrow it down to one person? I mean,
the thing is, right, is there's so many different aspects in the community. There's the podcasters, the live streamers, the producers, the writers, directors, editors, artists. But overall MVP, in my opinion, would be Lisa Penrose. Everybody knows Lisa. She's so fantastic. I love her to death on a personal level, on a friendship level, but also professionally. She has done all of it. She's been on streams. She's been on podcasts. She's done her own art, written her own modules. She started out on DMsGuild, worked for DMsGuild, and now she has an office at Wizards of the Coast doing both. She's done literally everything, and she's never had any big stir up. She's always been excited more about the prospect of dragging people up, pulling people with her to success and seeing their ideas, blossom and come to life, than she has with success from a business standpoint. And it shows, and people gravitate towards that, and she's been incredibly successful in everything that she's really tried to tackle.
I think as well, it's clear to see that, I would be hard pressed to say that DMsGuild would be the same without her contribution from the get-go.
It would be far lesser than it is today without her contributions, for sure.
I think I'm still giddy anytime I get an email. I'll actually tell a lie. So I'm going to admit this. My first ever sort of DMsGuild product, I did the faux pas of not forgetting to put a DMsGuild logo on my cover. And the sort of the first email I got was like, "Hey, you need to put like a logo on your cover," and I'm like, "Oh no, I'm ruined." I've literally, and my first foot out the door was into like a bear trap.
Oh, wow.
But it was such a sort of politely worded email. And
I think I may have been on the guild a little bit before you. Because my first products had the same problem.
I'm so glad I'm not alone.
They had just released that, like, you have to have the logo on all of your covers thing, and I didn't know it. So I'd already had a couple releases, no problems, and then I did a new release. And Lisa was not the person that emailed me. And he was horrible. He locked my account Like,
really?
didn't publish anything until I fixed it. He took it off.
Jeez.
I made no money for like the first week. He took it off the little like board.
Yeah.
I was like, oh great. I may as
wow.
well have not made this.
Welcome to DMsGuild.
Yeah. So then the next time when it happened and Lisa was like, hello, I was just saying, I was like, oh my God, I love you so much. Thank you.
So actually, I have something. This is like I guess like a selfish question of mine. But you are actually on the DMsGuild Design Dash.
Yes.
I'm curious, how do you find that experience overall? Like,
Design Dash was great.
Yeah.
I really did like. It's hard to qualify it, but it was great. I went on the first time, and I was with these peers that I knew and respected. They were all successful. But the thing about it was, before the stream started, everyone was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm chatting with and like all of us were gushing about the others, and I'm like, no, you're all the best. And they're like, you have so many bestsellers. I'm like, but they're all trash. What you do is so much fun. And we just kept bouncing that around. I had no clue at all that I would ever win that first one and come back, but for some reason people just really love the idea of princess who's obsessed with eating teeth.
Yeah, I mean, it's evocative. Everyone has teeth. Yeah. Everyone can relate.
So coming back on the second time was the exact same thing. We all just gushed about one another and like having the opportunity to meet and hang out and talk. Like that was 3/4 of the enjoyment for me. It was just being able to chit chat with creators like that, and it makes me jealous of doing a podcast like this where you get to chat with creators that you might like or know.
Well, hey, you're welcome back anytime. We'll just make no, that's awesome. I think, like I said, I do like the occasional sort of like spotlight the DMsGuild gets from being able to be on the D&D like official channel and stuff like that, and any sort of attention, the whole sort of like the best the DMsGuild can offer can sort of go out and put like a good display on. It's only good for the rest of us.
Exactly.
So, as we sort of begin to sort of like wrap up and sort of move on to the end, I don't suppose you can sort of share the whatever you're currently working on.
Yeah, I can give a little preview. I'm not gonna go too in depth.
No, of course. I'd like
be so long.
Yeah.
But I have for Q1 2020.
Oh, that's how you know when you're professional, when you're talking about quarters.
Yeah, I've been talking about quarters for forever just to get into the habit and sound professional.
Nice.
It's a good little thing to pick up. But coming out, I think this week, possibly next week, depending on my editor, I'm going to be having volume 2 of my first platinum bestseller, 50 notice board quests.
Amazing.
50 more notice boards. Because you just have to have fun with the titles.
Yeah.
It's got NPCs and short little snippets for quests and adventures. Just like I was saying before, to inspire DMs and players to kind of build off of them. They don't tell you how to run them. They don't tell you what the rewards exactly are. They just give you the framework to build something if that idea intrigues you.
Yeah.
And when you put 50 in front of your players or 10 or however many you want to use, they're like, I like this one. You know exactly where to start. You have the NPC, you know how it begins, and it's so easy to build off of it that hopefully people will get a kick out of volume 2.
And I must admit, notice boards are sort of so iconic. It's like, if you walk into a town and there's not a notice board, people get like, what's going on here?
Exactly.
We not wanted?
A lot of new players don't think about the notice board angle. So when a DM kind of pitches it and they're like, you go into the tavern and you see this board with all these notes on it. One of them says bounty and has your picture. I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah.
This is so cool. We take all of them.
So I recently, I'm curious. Where for each sort of the individual notice quests and stuff like that, did you have any sort of particular like process for like coming up with these sort of like, or was it literally like, I don't know.
The first time, it took me about a week, kind of just coming up with ideas like that. And I would take the actual classifieds, like the newspaper,
Yeah.
And anything that wasn't trying to sell a truck or rent a room, I would turn into a D&D quest. And
Really?
put them in there. Yeah. So, for instance, someone was saying they had bats in their attic, and they were willing to pay. They had bats in the attic of all of their apartment buildings, and they were willing to pay someone to come and get them without involving the city, just because it'd be cheaper. And like the idea that there were bats in the attic, I'm like, what's scarier than bats? Creatures made of sand. And then just twist it around. Sand spirits are haunting my house and my farm, kind of thing.
I must admit, I would have never have thought you would actually use like real life.
Yeah, that was the first one. That was the first one.
Yeah.
The second one, I actually made my own quest generator. It took like 5 days for me to make the damn thing, but I made it so that I could populate my own quests instead of relying on the newspapers, because it took so much longer to collect enough of them that were useful. So this time it was like click a button until something seemed cool and then make a quest from it. So that was way more efficient.
Yeah. Wow, I think it's weird because now that you mentioned it, the sort of like help ads in it, that's the modern day notice board.
And there are a lot of those about soldiers of fortune and mercenaries and private security companies.
Wow.
Here in America land.
Yeah, as I say, it's probably less common over here.
Oh man.
We'll probably have
need 3 to 5 security personnel for a black op. Okay, cool.
Well, ours is probably like
translate that.
Someone's thrown a trolley in a lake.
Trolling a lake.
What
are they looking for?
Yeah.
Some relic that was buried there.
But no, I'm curious. So the quest generator you built yourself, was it using like I don't know, like how do you go about generating that? Was it literally just like X needs Y because of Z, or?
Basically, yeah. I wrote down the forms that a quest could take, in my opinion, at least notice board ones.
Yeah.
And then for each one, I expanded it and had a random generator for NPCs and NPC names. And those were just stolen straight out of WotC books or made up on the fly.
Yeah.
Male, female, non-gendered, and just kind of run with it. So whenever it would pop up, it would be like rich, dragonborn, merchant.
Okay, yeah.
Name.
Yeah.
Help collecting thing, delivering thing, protecting person, reclaiming property, and offered payment of blank.
Yeah.
And it would fill that in too. So I could just click. And eventually it was like a gnome needs help making a sentient evil artifact that's a lot like oatmeal. And I'm like, all right, you gotta put that.
I mean, I can work with this.
Our necrotic brew is almost ready.
No, that's such, like I said, I'm fascinated about the sort of the process other sort of designers have, because in the past I used Inktober. I used the prompts for Inktober to sort of do encounters out of that, and the idea of using generators and stuff like that, just because I've dabbled with some code in the past and stuff like that, and you've given me some ideas. That's all I'm gonna say.
I mean, I also took the idea when I was building the generator, and I realized like there was nothing out there that really did what it was doing. That's another plot for 2020. I want to make that random generator for Android and ISO devices. So
that'd be awesome.
Kind of sit home and okay, this Dragonborn wants you to collect mushrooms.
So I've done it 6 times and it keeps telling me about this gnome and oatmeal.
Just wait it so that's almost always what you get.
It's like there's a lot of gnomes in this. So you've got the so that's coming out next week, and I imagine you've got some other things sort of was it Q2, maybe Q3?
Yeah. I still have more in Q1 coming up that I'm working on. Fair. Last night, I think that you even chimed in on the tweet. I had an idea for a podcast called Ask a Lich.
Oh yeah,
it's like a Dear Abby, or what was it, Agony Auntie?
Yeah, like Agony Aunt. I think it's because you meant to share your agony with them.
Exactly. It's this lich who, as soon as he attained unlimited power and unlife, was rather bored.
Yeah.
And decided he wanted to just answer adventurers' questions.
He's the most qualified, he's been around, I imagine.
Exactly. He's like, I've seen it. I've lived a million years. So the idea that these people will submit questions as their character in world, and he will address those questions, seemed to resonate with a lot of people. So I'm probably going to try that in February. This week, Friday, I'm going to be starting a live stream called The Little Rascals.
Cute.
With some very popular Twitter and internet people. The Lady Tiefling, Gabe James Games, Critical Bard, Raptor Hands. We got this really cool cast doing an all rogues D&D 5e live stream. Because a lot of people complain, you can't have too many bards. You shouldn't have more than one rogue. And we just kind of want to bop that on the head and show them that you can still have a fun and interesting game, even if they all know how to pick locks.
Yeah. Like I said, here's the thing. They every encounter, there's at least one locked door. You got to give them one. Like, who wants this one?
I told them session 0, I'm like, unless something happens, if you fail the roll, you just pick the lock. we're not going to stop the stream every time for all of you to take turns rolling to pick a locked door.
I must admit, the sort of the I've had a sort of like a dream project of mine that I've sort of had in the burning of mine is a book of adventure prompts for all all one class parties. For each of the classes, just say, if you're a class of like all bards, what could you be doing, or where could you be going? The class is sort of like band on tour, thieves guild for rogues. There's so I'm gonna again. I've stamped it. I put my flag in the ground. I'm gonna do it. If anyone watches this and creates it, know that I called it first. And I'll be honest. I only take 39% royalties. That's
right.
Yeah.
I'll take 39 of the 50%.
Of course, it's not 39 overall. It's of the half they get. So yeah.
Oh, okay. That's way more generous.
Oh, I know. I want to be less generous. We're around it. We'll make it 40% of whatever they get.
Okay.
But no. So I guess there's anything else you want to talk about. If not, I mean, I guess the best question is how can people sort of find out about the awesome stuff you're doing?
I've got several more things plotted out, but they're so far. Like, they're barely even notes, and they're not worth talking about. But anyone who wants to keep up with that sort of thing and talk with me directly, my DMs are always open. Twitter is your best place to reach me. Twitter, I'm on it at least 10 hours a day, constantly posting pictures and updates and questions and polls and rants and all that kind of stuff. Past that, you can find everything else on my website, DropTheDie.com, and pretty much that's kind of it,
Yeah.
I try to keep a Discord. I'm horrible at it. I have an Instagram. I post 2 pictures a week.
That's pretty good. That's not bad.
Yeah, you can find me practically everywhere at DropTheDie, including Steam. Let's play some games.
I think what it is nice when you find the sort of like username that just works. You're just like, well, this is me. This is me forever now. I'm gonna run with this.
The only problem is a lot of people think DropTheDie is like, yeah, man, you dropped the die on me. When it was more like, hold up, drop the die and tell me what you want to do. Stop
time out
for everything. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I guess, sure.
I guess, I mean, there's also like, you've missed the whole clumsy angle, which I can't keep the die in my hand. I keep dropping it. I'm sorry.
Fernando is a good friend of mine. Drop the dice. I get mixed up all the time. Like, sorry,
so who came up with that name first?
I don't know. I need to do research now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess we shall end it there. Honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. This has been
welcome.
This has been incredibly insightful. And I'm sure we will have to. I will be privileged to have you back in the future. I probably should space out a little bit and not just have you back next week. Although I wouldn't complain. I'd learn some things, but
let's put a tentative plan in for Q3.
Oh, Q3. I don't know. I've got quite busy. I've got this all class project I'm working on. So I'll pencil you in, but Yeah.
You should pencil me in on that project.
Oh, there we go. a live collaboration.
Collaboration.
Nice. Well, yeah. And also, I suppose this is last question. What's a good way to end a podcast? I haven't.
Generally, you say, "Thanks for listening."
Nice. Okay.
Me at blank.
Yeah. Oh, that is a good. I don't think I've even said my name yet.
Your own sign out. They know enough about me.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you very much. I'm Matthew. Nice to meet you. And you can follow me and find out all my stuff at Whitby Writes. And yeah, there will be some more information where you can find some of JB Little's other content in the description below, whether you're listening to this on YouTube or some other sort of podcasty form. And yeah, I'm going to keep it short and sweet and just bye. just bye.